In this first segment, we want to say good morning to Senator Craig Blair. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning.
Reporting live from the Capitol, Charleston, where they're trying to fashion a budget.
Senator, and I can only hope that you do as well as the younger Blair did yesterday in giving us a report, because she was really spot on.
Hit it out of the park.
Well, she's always better than what I am. I'm the guy that works behind the scenes.
That's funny.
I've seen so many times on Facebook, wherever I'm speaking, and I got into a little bit of it with a good friend of mine, Bob Kiss, the former speaker, when he came in, I think it was the beginning of this week, and spoke to Joint Finance Committee, and of course almost everybody from the legislature was there talking about what was going on, and I just about had enough of it when the governor has limited the call. And I didn't treat him that because he's one of the smartest people in the Capitol when it comes to understanding the financial aspects of the budgets and what goes on. Mike Carl can attest to this. It's rather complicated when you get into general revenue, special revenue, and how the governor can limit the call in the state of West Virginia, in West Virginia. The governor is one of the strongest governorships, not the person, the job description itself and how it's done in the whole United States.
Saying that, what you're saying, Senator, so our listeners who might not understand what you just said, is that our Constitution is written in such a way that gives the governor of West Virginia more power than most states give their governors in their states. Is that...
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And, what people think that, well, we could just override the governor's veto if we wanted to make this cut or that cut. When it comes to the budget, it doesn't work that way. You have to have 2/3 of the vote. And, on the Senate side alone, it's an 18-16 split. That's very, very close margins. We don't have the ability, if anybody wants to be partisan, to override the governor's veto on this. The House has a little bit more of leeway with that, but still don't have enough as well.
Well, and Senator, the other part of it is that part of what you're talking about is the modern budget amendment that we had a very weak governor before that, where the governor was just one of the Board of Public Works. The board, a majority of the board, really called the shot on the executive branch for the budget or for the revenues, and now the governor sets the revenue. So if you don't, in the games that have been played recently from that end of the Capitol, if you don't trust, if you think he's a little high on the revenue estimate, the legislature actually has to cut more than the governor's revenues would even demand. And so it's a tough problem. I agree with you about Bob Kiss. He's a very bright guy, my former law partner, but I had the remedy for Bob. Of course, he wouldn't listen to me. He listens more to Earl Ray than me. I don't know why, but I said, I've been up here. I know how much money's wasted. I know how much money, and they've cut, but there's a lot more to cut. I said, cut across the board and use the rainy day fund to fill in the critical programs, give them back that actually can be justified. And that he said, well, we got a plan. Here we are.
So what we have, guys, now, I guess from what I understand, we've got roughly $75 to $78 million in anticipated revenues from raising the tobacco tax by 45 cents. But that still leaves us, as we talked with Delegate Blair, Sarah Blair, yesterday, that still leaves us a long ways away from the promised land. She told us, Senator, that roughly $100 million coming out of the rainy day fund. We're still a little bit short. So where are we now as we end this first week? Kind of size it up for us in terms of how we get to that $270 million.
We've moved off the needle a little bit by the Senate passing out that cigarette tax yesterday. That was an interesting scenario in itself. The Democrats actually voted against all except for one, the 45-cent tax, They wanted $1 supposedly, and they actually voted against it because it was 45, and it almost failed. A tie vote is a fail, and it would have prolonged us even further. We knew that in Senate leadership that the House had already rejected earlier this year a $1 cigarette tax, which I voted against. On my side, there were 6 of us that voted against it out of the Senate. For that, we sent it over to the House, and it was rejected by the House. So, using the history of that, it's like, well, we're going to pass over to you what we think that you could possibly pass as a revenue stream, because no matter how we look at it, no matter how you look at this budget, there had to be a revenue stream somewhere when we can't get to the special revenue. Now, let me explain to you about special revenue. Well, maybe I better just explain by general revenue since we have limited time. And say it's $4 billion, and it's went anywhere from 4.6 to 4.2. Right now we're dealing in the 3.8 range of what the real revenue stream's in, but that wasn't what the budget was. The budget, let's just say, is $4 billion, just for the sake of easy speaking. $3 billion of it is all in education. So that leaves us $1 billion left that we have to come up with $270 billion from. And this is what I was getting at earlier about me being on Bob Kiss, getting the governor off the call up to let us get to some of the special revenues, because like the Department of Highways, that's special revenue. That has nothing to do with the general revenue budget. So you can't get anything into there to do anything with that. And people, the average person out here sees waste every day. And we want to be able to fix that. But we can't do that legislatively.
Senator, two points. One is what special revenue is simply a matter of legislation. I mean, I understand federal funds, you can't fool with that. But what special revenue, what's the highway fund versus the general fund, is just a matter of legislation. Why can't you tweak that?
Oh, because that's a great question. And that's because we can't do anything legislatively that the governor does not put on the call. Okay? That's back to the strong governorship.
Right.
If the governor doesn't put it on the call, we can't do it.
So that's something you'd have to do in regular session, because he's not going to call for that. But the other thing, and you mentioned education, sacred cow, and at least by the interpretation of the Constitution by the Supreme Court years and years ago. We can debate that, but there was I had a concern, and some others here had a concern. Metro News had a report about the Speaker and the President sent a message to the governor asking to expand the call, and including the ability to reduce the Growth County facilities funding in relation to the school aid formula.
Yeah, we wanted as many things on the table as possible. It doesn't mean it's going to happen, but it gives us flexibility to be able to work with that. There was 6 or 7 things on that call. In fact, I don't have that letter in front of me right now. I wish I did, because I'd bark them out to you. I'm not good at remembering all those things, but we put enough things on the call to be able to give us flexibility on what was going on there. Absolutely did that give Charlie Trump, Herb Snyder, Craig Blair, and John Unger heartburn. Yep. But you can't sit here and take and to exempt your area and make it look like that you don't want anything to happen to the Eastern Panhandle, because when that ball starts rolling, then you can't get a budget at all, because everybody represents a certain part of the state. And when you take all the cards off the table, or put them off the table like that, then you get nothing. You end up with a stalemate across the board.
That's a great answer, and I'm glad you said it that way, because it just shows that sacrifices have to be made, and at least you have to show good faith. I mean, for instance, if you're going to get rid of the fees for the dog breeders, you got to have a counterbalance of good faith on something that we care about.
I just want some clarification. I think I heard you right, but I just want to make sure I did. That only the governor can call you into special session, and when the governor calls you into special session, only the governor, you can only consider measures put forth by the governor. In other words, you're not allowed to call yourself into special session.
We are allowed to call ourselves into special session, but again, you have to have a supermajority to do that, and we don't have the ability to do that on the Senate side.
I see.
And here's another example. I've got a bill that's out there that would cut our pay 20%. And I was all gung-ho for this. I think it's the right thing to do. We're in tough times right now, and why not? Show to the people of West Virginia that the legislature is not all this high and mighty and that, we come first and not the people. That's anything but the truth. From that standpoint, and that doesn't make any difference which party you're in, which house you're in, or anything like that. I believe I can speak for all of us. We all come with a good heart, different ideas on how to get to where we want to be, but we're all looking out for our constituency and trying to look out for the state. But that very bill cannot be, even if we want it to, addressed unless the governor put it on the call, and even then it's questionable that we can do it because it says specifically in our Constitution that legislative pay can only be addressed in regular session.
A lot of limitations on your room to maneuver. Makes it even harder, no question about it.
And now, I want to commend the Senate Chairman of Finance, Mike Hall. He did something that I felt was rather incredible to get the ground started, because we were working in groups of 3 and 4 on getting things done, trying to work with this budget. And we brought down a smart board, and what that is basically, for your listeners, is a big TV set that you can actually touch it like a tablet. Just imagine a huge iPad. And of course, it's got the Excel sheet up there with our budget, and where we can go through. And what we did is, on the Republican side, we sat down as a caucus, and we made an agreement with all 18 members that if 14 or 15 of us was in favor of it, then we were going to make that cut. And we went through line by line by line, and we got to about $70 million of reductions out of that budget. It was about 6 hours later, the finance chairman comes back and said, well, got a little bit of bad news for you guys, because about $25 million of what we were capable of doing out of that was off the table. We couldn't get to it. It was incapable of being done. And it was like, oh my God. So we just got done figuring out basically 1/3 of, because that's been basically the deal, 1/3 revenue, 1/3 cut, 1/3 rainy day fund. That's what we were looking at, trying to get to those numbers. And here we were back at square one. So you talk about frustrating. It very much so is frustrating from that standpoint. And we don't want to do tax increases. A 1% sales tax is off the board. That isn't going to happen, especially when you factor in so many of our municipalities right now with the home rule has implemented a 1% sales tax. That would take it from 7% to 8% if you did another 1%, and then put our border counties very much at a disadvantage with our surrounding states, and especially when you're looking at Home Depots and Lowe's and places like that, where then we lose even more revenue. You think you're gaining it, and you end up losing it because people go across the borders, and a lot of our population base is on border counties.
Craig, I want to jump in here. State Senator Craig Blair with us on Eastern Panhandle Talk. You said you need to go at 9. Is that a hard out, or do you have time for one more question?
No, I have one more. I'll work with you.
David? No, you're good? Okay. Here's the question I would ask you. If you could go back and start the 60-day session over again, is there anything you could have done differently where you would not have found yourselves in this situation today?
Oh, man, see, that's a tough question. There's things that we do. Number one is I would have introduced the legislative pay cut, knowing that we were that you had to do it in a regular session with that. But see, the thing is that you got to deal with the House as well on what's going on. And when you have the Democrats that are caucusing with what's called the Liberty Caucus, and they're doing everything they can just to make it so that we've got no budget at all. And I find that appalling, okay? Absolutely appalling that the ultimate goal is to get us into July, August, September with no budget. That is an absolute failure on the legislature's part. And when you tie those two together, it becomes quite the quandary.
Is the Liberty Caucus, Senator, the Liberty Caucus is only in the House of Delegates, is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
And approximately how big is that group?
The numbers can float anywhere from 8 to 16.
8 to 16. So it's roughly like the so-called Liberty Caucus in the United States House of Representatives. Is that right?
Yeah, right.
Okay.
And you know what? I agree with a lot of their positions. In fact, I would almost say that I agree with most of their positions. Craig Blair's never voted for a tax increase that I can remember or know of the whole time I've in my legislative career. I am totally opposed to tax increases. I do not like it. And we've done a wonderful job over the years of being able to reduce taxes across the board in the state of West Virginia, whether it's the food tax, the business franchise tax, reducing the corporate net. The list goes on and on and on, because we realize that if you can get businesses back into the state of West Virginia, then you actually grow your tax base and you have greater flexibility of being able to handle budget situations. And again, we've hemorrhaged manufacturing jobs for decades, and we're now turning that corner, and we've got to be able to tide ourselves over long enough so that we can get more places in, like Procter & Gamble, like the ammunition manufacturing plant that's taking place down in Kanawha County. The tide has turned on that. And we've positioned ourselves well, not just with regionally with surrounding states, but even nationally. And we believe that it's going to get better, but we still got to be able to pay our bills today.
Craig, I got to jump in because we do have to break for the news. I want to thank you very much for your time today. We look forward to talking with you again, hopefully next week.
Not a problem. Sorry I wasn't as good as my daughter.